Right. Yes, the contents of engagement letter divided under 3. Principal contents, additional matters, and when relevant additional matters. Right. Here I'll tell you one more thing. You understand, institute has 2 styles of asking question, wholesale and retail. What is wholesale? Briefly discuss the contents of the engagement letter. So you can write principal contents, additional matters, when relevant additional matters, whichever. And retail style, briefly discuss the principal contents to be put in the audit engagement letter. You understand? So wholesale and retail. And nowadays the fashion, the trend of the institute is more towards retail questions. It's outdated now for ICAI to ask wholesale questions. Why? Because up to May 2000 or May 2012 or November 2012, that question number 3, question number 4, which used to be there, no, there used to be 2 questions of 8 marks. There used to be 2 questions, so the paper used to be relatively very small. Now what has happened? Question number 3, there will be 4 questions of 4 marks each. Question number 4 again, 4 questions of 4 marks each. Now 8 mark question ka trend has gone away. So obviously they can't ask you a wholesale question, and rather what they are doing, made that same question is asked for 4 marks. The same question is asked for 4 marks. But anyways, now more of trend of ICC, because final though we've not studied much so far. Okay, IPCC mein, if you remember in chapter 1, you had a small discussion regarding relationship of auditing with other disciplines. If you remember, auditing and accounting, auditing and law, auditing and economics, auditing and mathematics, auditing and statistics, auditing and production, auditing and financial management, auditing and behavioral science. Now, what is the general mentality of the student? I will learn all the headings and go. You understand? 6 mark, 8 mark question will come. I will study all the headings, that I will write. And then baki aage potatoes. You understand, no? Ecology. Okay, I will write it on my own. So what institute has identified this very much at IPCC also. What they did in one attempt in question number 1, B or C, question number 1, they asked, the discipline of auditing is very closely linked with the discipline of. So now only auditing and behavioral science, 5 marks. So now 1 mark you can write on your own. 5 marks, what you will write on your own? There is a limit, no, to how much you can write on your own. And then immediately the examiner comes to know. You understand? So that's the change in trend, कि जो heading करके जाता है उसका तो head ही चला जाता है. You just, it's like, when you don't study something, don't assume that I'm not studying this. It's just that you're saying that I'll study this after 6 months. It's not ऐसे मत सोचो कि नहीं, this I've left an option. It's not an option, you've kept it in, in the next lot of exam leave to be studied that time. Right, so there are 2 styles of asking question, wholesale and retail. And the rule is that whenever the question is asked in retail, you should know the points in detail. You understand? So detailed, study. It's not a hurry, to say that I have completed 10 pages in 1 hour. We don't want to show anyone. You look at, what is the quality, whether you've studied it in detail. Okay, right. So, you never know. Some exam question number 7, write short notes on principal contents of engagement letter. Right, so then you have to write specifically only the principal contents. Right, so principal मतलब क्या? ये तो engagement letter में होना ही चाहिए. है ना, compulsory. Principal contents of engagement letter, starting with the objective of the audit and the scope of the audit. Objective to obtain a reasonable assurance that financial statements are free from material misstatement. And scope, balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow notes for the year ended 31st March 2018. So objective and scope. Then responsibilities of the auditor. Responsibilities of the management. Then the identification FRF and the anticipated form and content of the report. anticipated, expected form and content of the report is now required to be given along with the engagement letter itself. The draft format of your audit report. Earlier, you were not required to give the draft format of your report along with the engagement letter. But now what does it say? Anticipated draft format of the report has to be given along with the engagement letter itself. Okay, we will report our findings as follows. Can anybody tell me what is this point number 3 and 4? Responsibilities of management and identification of the AFRF. These 2 points are nothing but the preconditions for an audit. Which AFRF will you identify, which is acceptable to you, and then the responsibilities of the management, which we studied over there. And obviously, preconditions though have to be there in the engagement letter, no? So that is why it is there in the principal contents of the engagement letter. Then, sometimes in an audit, branch auditor, external auditor, sometimes in an audit, you may have to use the work of the predecessor auditor. And sometimes, okay, so last year somebody else was doing the audit. So in that case, you will have to use the work of the predecessor auditor. So for branch audit, we have SA 600. Internal audit, SA 610. Expert, we have SA 620. And predecessor auditor, SA 510. That's just for our remembering. Right. Then in the audit, as such, the audit working papers are the property of the auditor. But he may at his discretion make portions of or extracts from available. Right, so auditors, working papers, any, agreement with the auditor for sharing of the working papers. Then any restriction on the auditor's liability. Any restriction on the auditor's liability. Or any further agreements with the client regarding any additional checking to be done or so. Matters. अगर ज़रूरत है तो हम इनके बारे में भी engagement letter में लिख सकते हैं. When relevant additional matters, arrangements concerning the involvement of the branch auditors, the internal auditors, the experts, the predecessor auditor, agreement regarding sharing of working papers, any restriction on the auditor's liability, and any further agreements. Right. Then after that second one, you have the additional matters. Say you want to elaborate on the scope of audit. You want to write in detail regarding what is an audit. Then audit being done by an auditor, does it give guarantee for fraud error detection? No, unavoidable risk that some material misstatements may not be detected. If we have not found fraud error, that does not mean that we have not done the audit as per the standards. Even though if we've done the audit as per the standards, still there is an unavoidable risk that some material misstatements may not be detected. That some material misstatements may not be detected. Then after that, you can write regarding the audit planning and the composition of the audit team. Which all 30-40 people are going to come for this particular audit. In the course of audit, we will require the written representations from the management. Then that the management will inform us of any subsequent events of which they become aware. That they will provide to the auditor the draft financial statements and other information for the audit. Obviously, otherwise, how we'll do the audit if they don't provide us with draft financial statements for the audit? So, written representations, for that we have SA 580. Subsequent events, we have SA 560. And for other information, we have SA 720. So auditor will require written representations from the management. Management, you will inform us of any subsequent events. Management, you will provide us with draft financial statements and other information. And now, what am I telling you? Engagement letter, additional matters to be put over there. Then, billing, okay, how the fees are going to be charged. Then the fact that our audit process is subject to peer review. Oh, can anybody tell me why am I writing this in the engagement letter? Ki audit process is subject to peer review. You know peer review, no? Institute sends a reviewer to check the quality of services of your firm. So why do you want to write this in the engagement letter being sent to the client? The reviewer will have access to your working papers. And in the working papers, the confidential information of the client would be there. We know confidentiality, not to disclose the secrets of the client unless required by law or taken prior consent. That is why we are taking the consent. During the review process, the reviewer may have access to the working papers. It's not necessary that this file will be picked up, that or your peer review will be done. But in case if it is done, he has access to the working papers. And the last one, yes, we issue 2 copies of the engagement letter to the management. One for them to sign and keep it on their record. And second for them to sign and send it back to the auditor. So it's a green signal for the auditor that they have accepted the terms and conditions and that you can start with the audit. Is everybody with me? What am I discussing with you? The contents of the audit engagement letter. Principal contents, additional matters, and when relevant additional matters. Engagement letter, additional matters, and then you have the... So we issued 2 copies of the engagement letter to the management. And we have also written the preconditions for the audit in the engagement letter. Have we also written the preconditions? Preconditions have we written in the engagement letter? Yes, we've written the preconditions now, and one of the precondition is what? To provide the auditor with all information of which the management is aware. So now what is happening? The management, the board of directors of Jio Limited are reading this engagement letter. And what you've written over there? To provide the auditor with all information. And at that point, they pick up the phone and dial the number of the auditor and say, hello auditor. Your engagement letter we have received. You have written in the engagement letter that provide us with all the information. See, right now, before you come for the audit, before that only we are telling you that fixed assets information we will not be giving you. You understand? So what is this? This is an example of a limitation on scope. And right now in my example, it has been imposed by the management prior to acceptance and prior to audit. Prior to acceptance, अभी तो कहानी शुरू भी नहीं हुई. And पहले ही उनका phone आ गया. Fixed assets information will not be provided to you. Auditor says, bye-bye, I am not going to come to you. Not to accept only such an engagement as an audit engagement. Bye-bye. And prior to acceptance of audit. Second one, you send the engagement letter, they accepted, they sent you back a copy, you started going. The day evening they come to the auditor's cabin. Auditor cabin is given at client place. 5th day evening they come to auditor cabin. From tomorrow we can't give you information regarding inventory. So now what is happening? Limitation on scope imposed after acceptance of engagement. This is very near and dear to ICAI. After acceptance of engagement, ATF. And a limitation on scope imposed after acceptance. So what they are telling you, they came to your cabin and what did they tell you? From tomorrow, inventory will not be provided. What will you say? Okay, no problem. Withdraw, qualify. हाँ, पेज नहीं भरेगा ना, डायरेक्टली क्वालिफाइड विड्रॉ लिख दिया तो. First, you need to ask the reasons to the management. What happened to your inventory? You understand now? Like say, come to me and tell me from tomorrow I'm not going to come. What will I say? Okay, don't come. I'll ask you reason. No, what happened to you all of a sudden? And the reasons, ask the reasons to the management. Ask the reasons to the management. Understand the circumstances which necessitated the change. Circumstances which necessitated the change. They say, CA, you are not understanding why we are telling you we will not give you information regarding inventory. You know, our inventory has been taken away, and that area, you know, Kashmir border, there our India-Pakistan border, there our inventory is lying. And you know, right now there is very war-like situation over there. So if you want to go, you go. But I am telling you in your favor only, that don't do that physical verification. And the circumstances which necessitated the change. But auditor says, no, I think now I cannot give you a reasonable assurance. Now my assurance will be lower. It may lead to a lower level of assurance. Then in that case, one thing you may decide to withdraw from the engagement. Because what is happening? Now you are unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. So one thing what you can do is withdraw from the engagement. Or second thing which you can do is you can either issue a qualified opinion or you can issue a disclaimer of opinion. When to issue qualified, when to issue disclaimer, we'll see in the audit report standards. And whatever you decide to do, obviously, first you need to communicate to TCWG, that is those charged with governance. You understand? Ask the reasons to the management and the circumstances which necessitated the change. It may provide a lower level of assurance because of which the auditor is unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. So one, either withdraw from the engagement or issue a qualified or a disclaimer of opinion. That is limitation on scope imposed after acceptance of engagement. Limitation on scope imposed after acceptance of engagement. Does everybody get that? Limitation on scope imposed after acceptance of engagement. 2017 was the first year when I did the audit of Jio Limited. 2017 was the first year when I did the audit of Jio Limited. So obviously first year of audit, I would have certainly issued an engagement letter. 2018 is now the second year that I am doing the audit of Jio Limited. So now this audit of Jio Limited has become a recurring audit for me. 17 was the first year, so that year to obviously no question only. I have to issue engagement letter. But now 2018, second year of audit, recurring audit. Should the auditor issue a new engagement letter for each period in case of a recurring audit? Should the auditor issue a new engagement letter for each audit and for recurring audits for each period? Should he issue a new engagement letter for each period for a recurring audit? The standard says the auditor may decide not to send a new engagement letter for each period. May decide. But generally in practical life, if you see, it is a healthy practice to send a new engagement letter for each period, for each audit. But what does the standard say? He may decide not to send a new engagement letter for each audit. Not to send a new engagement letter for each audit or each period. Right. But there are a few circumstances which warrant the auditor to send a new engagement letter for a recurring audit. By default, what has the standard said? If you want to send, you send. If you don't want to send, don't send. We don't have any problem. But then there are certain circumstances where you can't use the relaxation, but compulsorily you will have to send a new engagement letter. What are those circumstances which warrant the auditor to send a new engagement letter for a recurring audit? ATF, all-time favorite. Circumstances, ऐसे तो क्या बोला है, भेजना है तो भेजो, नहीं भेजना है तो मत भेजो. बट ये ऐसे कोई सर्कमस्टांसेस है वहां पे एक नया लेटर भेजना ही पड़ेगा रिकरिंग ऑडिट में. व्हाट आर दोस सर्कमस्टांसेस? Yes, it talks about 7 changes and it talks about 1 misunderstanding. It talks about 7 changes and 1 misunderstanding. There is a change in management. So obviously new management, new engagement letter. Change in the ownership of the entity. Change in the nature and size of the entity's business. Change in the AFRF. Last year tak it was accounting standards, this year it has become IFRS. Change in the AFRF. Change in laws and regulations. Last year tak it was Companies Act 1956, now it is Companies Act 2013. Last year tak it was service tax and excise and customs, this year it is GST. Change in laws and regulations, change in other reporting requirements. Up to last year it was CARO 2015, now it is CARO 2016. Change in other reporting requirements. Change in terms of engagement. Up to last year we had the new format of the audit, old format of the audit report. I told you with effect from 1st April 2017, you have the new format of the audit report. So change in the audit engagement terms, no change in the audit reporting standards, audit standards, or where there is any misunderstanding with the client as to the terms of engagement. Circumstances which warrant the auditor to send a new engagement letter for a recurring audit. By default, you are not required to send a new engagement letter for each audit. But there are circumstances where it says you can't use the relaxation, you will have to send a new engagement letter. Change in management, change in ownership, change in nature and size, change in AFRF. You understand AFRF, no now? Change in laws and regulations, change in other reporting requirements, change in the terms of engagement, or where there is any misunderstanding with the client. Does everybody understand that? Next one. You have been appointed as the auditor of the holding company and you've also been appointed as the auditor of the subsidiary companies. Or you have been appointed as the auditor of the head office and you have also been appointed as the auditor of the branch offices. Common engagement letter or separate engagement letter? Audit of components, that's the heading that I'm discussing with you. Common engagement letter or separate engagement letter? Holding companies, subsidiary companies, head office, branch offices, whether you will issue a common engagement letter or a separate engagement letter. Here the answer is it depends. It depends upon the legal requirement. Your head office is in India, your branch is in Czechoslovakia. How can you send a common engagement letter? Holding company, subsidiary company management are altogether different. How can you send a common engagement letter? Some of the branches are being audited by another auditor. You're going to use the work performed by them. So again, you cannot send a common engagement letter. So here the answer is it depends upon the legal requirement, the independence of the management, the extent of work performed by other auditors in deciding whether to issue separate engagement letters. In deciding whether to issue separate engagement letters. Does everybody understand that? And one thing which I had discussed in the beginning of the standard, okay, what if the AFRF is unacceptable to the auditor? Don't accept it under 210, but if it's a special purpose framework, you can accept the assignment under SA 800. Can you use the phrase true and fair? No, you will use the phrase prepared. And then you will give specific disclosures in the audit report in another matter paragraph. Okay, these financial statements which have been audited by us have been prepared by management in accordance with German GAAP. And you will also tell management to give additional disclosures in the financial statements. these financial statements are as per German GAAP. And AFRF is unacceptable. German GAAP, is it acceptable to you? German GAAP, is it acceptable to you? No, it is unacceptable, but required by law regulation. Legal requirement, holding company is in Germany. So what does it say? You can accept such an engagement subject to 3 conditions. 1, not to use the phrase true and fair. Second, management will provide additional disclosures in the financial statements. And third, auditor will make additional disclosures in the audit report. What heading am I discussing with you? AFRF is unacceptable, but required by law regulation. So what we say, we will do the audit, but we will not use the phrase true and fair. Management, you will give additional disclosures in the financial statements. Auditor says, I will put an additional paragraph in my audit report. Right, so that is SA 210. Yes, agreeing the terms of audit engagement. What was the first question in the standard which we studied? Preconditions for an audit. Giant precondition and the 5 other preconditions. Then the contents of the engagement letter divided under 3. Principal contents, additional matters, and when relevant additional matters. Then after that, limitation on scope. Prior to acceptance of engagement and after acceptance of engagement. Then recurring audit. Not required to send a new engagement letter, but there are circumstances. Then audit of components. And then AFRF is unacceptable but required by law or regulation. Is everybody getting what I am saying? Right, so that completes the second standard, SA 210, agreeing the terms of audit engagement. Now after that, I come to next 4 standards, SA 700, SA 701, SA 705 and SA 706. Or agle kuch attempt, these standards are going to have additional importance. Because all 4 are applicable with effect from 1st April 2017. So rather right now we don't have any audit reports also as per these standards. है ना, company मतलब practice industry में if you see अभी no reports are there. जो 31st March 2018 का report आएगा या जो 30th June 2017 का quarterly report आएगा, that will be as per the new format. 705, 706 were already there which have been revised and 701 is a new one. Communicating key audit matters in the independent auditor's report. You understand? And lot of case studies and drafting, this essays are required. Right? So 700, 701, 705 and 706. Is that okay? Right? So let's start with the first one. Right, in the beginning of your book, somewhere, where you have little bit of space, you have to keep a track of the sequence in which we are studying the standards. Let's say we did 200, then 210, now we are doing the 700, 701, 705, 706. Then after that, we'll go to 500. And later you will understand the reason behind the sequence. If after 210, I will take 220, you'll not understand anything. So we intentionally, so this sequence has a reason behind it from the viewpoint of understanding. Right, so 700, 701, 705 and 706. Right, so coming to the first one, Essay 7. What is the title? Forming an opinion and reporting on financial statements. Forming an opinion and reporting on financial statements. Right, so this standard has been divided under 2 parts. Part 1 says, Arey auditor, pehle form an opinion. And once that you formed an opinion, and once you form an opinion, then you report. Forming an opinion and reporting on financial statements. Do you get that? Okay. Right. Pay attention now. While accepting the engagement, what did we say? The AFRF could be a special purpose framework or it could be a general purpose framework. This was when? While accepting the engagement. If it was special purpose framework, 800. General purpose framework, SA 210. You understand? No. Now, while forming an opinion, is everybody with me? Now, while forming an opinion, you need to check whether the AFRF, are you getting? Now, while गड़बड़ करने का नहीं, acceptance का story खत्म हो गया अभी, GPF या SPF. Now, while check whether the AFRF is a compliance framework or whether it is a fair presentation framework. है ना? Whether it is a compliance framework or whether it is a fair presentation framework. Just to tell you, begin with, only in case of a fair presentation framework, you can express an opinion saying true and fair. जिसके नाम में fair, उसके opinion में true and fair. You understand? So obviously you might have understood. Okay, in case of a compliance framework, what phrase we will use for expressing an opinion? Prepared. Prepared. Because report में क्या लिखना है वो देखना पड़ेगा ना. Prepared लिखना है कि true and fair लिखना है ना? And more simply, pay attention first, don't write anything. Itna you remember. If an Indian company has prepared financial statements only as per accounting standards, compliance framework, accounting standard plus schedule 3, fair presentation framework. Because we said, no, only accounting standards we cannot express an opinion saying true and fair. It has to be accounting standards plus schedule 3. So if they prepare only as per accounting standards, then though it is a general purpose framework, but still it is a compliance framework. Accounting standard is general purpose, but भले ही general है फिर भी compliance है क्योंकि schedule 3 नहीं है. और German gap के हिसाब से बनाया तो special purpose भी है और compliance भी है. तो गड़बड़ करने का नहीं, इन दोनों के बीच में you have to draw a border. GPF, SPF has nothing to do while forming an opinion. GPF, SPF has got to do when you are accepting the engagement. Well, forming an opinion, you need to check whether it is a compliance framework or fair presentation framework. Because if it is compliance, I will write in my report prepared. And if it is fair presentation, I will write in my report true and fair. Can I say that that fair presentation framework includes a compliance framework? Certainly yes. What I do in addition to 3 or extremely rare circumstances, I do a departure. But that's extremely rare circumstances, general accounting standards. Do you understand? We are just learning the terminology. जैसे कल मैंने बताया ना, cricket terminology, FRF, compliance framework, fair presentation framework, TCWG, sufficient appropriate audit evidence, RMM, all those terms. Done? Right. Okay, so now they've defined here compliance, fair presentation. Okay, now, yes, what's the page number in your books? 1.136, no? Right, now see, forming an opinion on the financial statements. Right, so now what I want to tell you is that read these 2 lines and tell me what you understand. In your books, you have these 2 lines over there. Please read these 2 lines, page number 1.140. And you have those 2 lines in the books. I've highlighted it on the slide also. So read those 2 lines and tell me what sense does it make for you.
First of all, we should form an opinion whether the financial statement are as per applicable AFRF. Then, in his opinion, he will decide whether it is free from material statement as whole or not.
Okay, so can you put it in any other short words?
For example, compliance with AS plus Then, but compliance with essentiality does not mean that fraud does not exist. Because
It has to mean.
but the fraud can be hidden under the.
No, if there are material frauds and errors in the financial statements, you cannot say they are in compliance with AFRF. Okay. No, but if you want to correlate, so how would you correlate? These two sentences, if I want a correlation.
To form an opinion, a financial statement should be free from material statement.
Something more to what I have taught you already yesterday. Yes, tell me. Yes, you are going to tell me, I will not tell you. In order to form an opinion in accordance with SA 700, we have to form an opinion in accordance with SA 700.
Reasonable assurance.
More. So what is that? Reasonable assurance. It's nothing but?
Assurance, but not absolute assurance.
No. Okay, that's right. But then, what is this? What two sentences you are reading? They are nothing but.
There is no fraud in error.
143.
No. You're near about. I want those two words. 2 words. वो 4 हो गए.
True and fair.
No. Arey, it's very easy. If it's difficult, I don't ask a question. So for all objectives of SA 200, I told you it's simple. Reasonable assurance that financial statements are free from material misstatement. Financial statements have been prepared by the management in accordance with the AFRF. So in order to form an opinion in accordance with SA 700, obviously whatever is the overall objective of SA 200, it's so obvious. Okay, आज जब I have to give my report, what will I check? Okay, whatever was my overall objective of the audit, whether that has been achieved or not. In order to form an opinion in accordance with SA 700, you need to check whether the overall objective of SA 200 has been achieved or not. In order to check whether the overall objective of SA 200 has been achieved or not, you need to check which is the AFRF. Now, please give me a correct answer. Which could be the AFRF? I have to form an opinion. So for that I have to check whether overall objective has been achieved. For that I need to check which is the AFRF. Which could be the AFRF? It could be a compliance framework, or it could be a fair presentation framework. Why do I need to check this, whether it is a compliance or a fair presentation framework? Because if it's a compliance framework, I will express an opinion saying prepared. And if it's a fair presentation framework, I will express an opinion saying true and fair or present fairly. But present fairly to koi use hi nahi karta. Everybody likes true and fair. That's more familiar. Okay, so prepared or true and fair. Now, so say I have these financial statements which have been given to me for audit. These financial statements management has prepared as per German GAAP. So this is balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow notes. On this I have to give an audit report saying that whether they have been prepared as per German GAAP. So in order to give a report whether they have been prepared as per German GAAP, I need to check for 6 points. And if I check for these 6 points, the overall objective also has been achieved. Are you getting what I am telling you? Again, this question has not been asked so far. 6 points and additional points. Right. So, in case of a compliance framework, where I have to express an opinion saying prepared, I need to check for 6 points. Practically also this is so important. Tomorrow post qualification, once you get your COP, you set up your own practice and somebody comes to you and say, give us a report prepared. on these financial statements. So what is it that you need to check in those financial statements? One, whether all the accounting policies which have been used in the preparation of financial statements, have they been adequately disclosed? Like AS1 also says, no, that all accounting policies used in the preparation of financial statements should be disclosed at one place as a part of financial statements. Second, whether these accounting policies, whether they are consistent with the AFRF. Whether they are consistent with the AFRF. You understand? Are they consistent with the AFRF? Means say this company has prepared financial statements only as per German GAAP. Say German GAAP may also for valuation for inventory, as an example I am saying, okay, only FIFO or weighted average is allowed. And what they have written in their accounting policy, that we have done valuation of inventory as per LIFO method. So their accounting policy is not consistent with the AFRF. So you need to check whether the accounting policies which have been selected and consistently applied, are they consistent with the AFRF? Like current investments, AS13 says cost or market price whichever is lower. NRV. What they've done, cost or market price whichever is higher. So it's not consistent with the AFRF. Next one. All the accounting have been made by the management in the preparation of these fines. All the provisions, provision for tax, provision, all the estimates, are they reasonable? Next one. All the information given in these financial statements, is it RRCU? What is RRCU? Is it relevant? Is it reliable? Is it comparable? And is it understandable? Relevant, reliable, comparable and understandable. Relevant. And they have given the list of all the awards which the company has got during the year. It is not relevant to give this in the financial statements notes to account. Is it reliable? Is it comparable? यानी कि previous year column ना, current year column 2018, previous year column 2017 should be given. And understandable. You should understand how much is the gross profit of the company, how much is the EBITDA of the company, how much is the profit before tax, profit after tax of the company. So understandable. Next one. Effect of material transactions and events. Effect of material transactions and events, whether it has been adequately disclosed. Like say, during the year, during the year, say the company suffered a huge loss on account of fire of 120 crore. And what they did, they put it under two miscellaneous expenses, 120 crore. Every person on earth will be wondering, miscellaneous expenses 120 crore. AS5 also says, exceptional, unusual, non-recurring, extraordinary items of income and expenses to be shown separately. And so here, effect of material transactions and events has been adequately disclosed. And whether it has been separately disclosed. Last one, the terminology used in the preparation of financial statements, including the title of each financial statement, is it appropriate? The terminology used in the preparation of financial statements, including the title of each financial statement, is it appropriate? Like, balance sheet. I think since the time you are introduced to commerce, that balance sheet is called balance sheet. There is no alternative name for that, no? But you say, no, so boring. Everybody says balance sheet. Hatke. So what I will do, capital liabilities and assets as of 31st March 2018. Have you ever seen any balance sheet having this heading? Capital liabilities and assets as of 31st March? No, the terminology is not appropriate. The terminology used. Statement of profit and loss or profit and loss account. ये दो ही देखने मिलता है ना. What this company Jio Limited, what is it seen as? Kharcha Pani for the year ended 31st March 2018. The words are written Kharcha, Kharchapani, Kharcha Pani for the year ended 2018. Is this the correct terminology? Land and building, no? Schedule 3, what does it say? Land and building. They say no building, skyscraper, Eiffel Tower, Burj Khalifa. Indian Burj Khalifa. And this is not the accepted terminology. And the terminology used. For you say profit before tax, they are saying kamai before tax. The terminology used in the preparation of financial statements, is it appropriate? So, these are German GAAP financial statements. I have to give a report prepared. So, what I should check? Okay. सारा AFRF के हिसाब से है क्या? Yes. Material transaction event अलग से दिखाया क्या? Yes. Now, if it's a fair presentation framework, will I check for these 6 points? If it's a fair presentation framework, will I check for these 6 points? Yes. And in addition to those 6 points, I will check for 1, 3. Wonderful. And now, what? Okay, whether the event, SP, structure, presentation, content of the financial statements is such that it achieves a fair presentation. In simple language, I have to tell you, it simply means whether Schedule 3 has been complied with or not. Okay, the structure, the dhacha, the presentation and the content. Like, Schedule 3, what does it say? Advance tax and provision for tax. Should it be net or advance tax and provision for tax? Net or gross? Net करके दिखाना होता है. So you've shown it gross. Deferred tax asset, deferred tax liability. Gross or net? Net. So if you show it gross, then you've not complied with Schedule 3. So the overall structure, presentation, content of the financial statements is such that it achieves a fair presentation. The overall structure, presentation, content of the financial statements is such that it achieves a fair presentation. Right? These are the points. So it's like I told you, since your childhood you are listening to the term true and fair. But tomorrow, actually, when you have to give a report true and fair, these are the 7 points which you should check in those financial statements and then give a report on true and fair. So practical life se bhi this is very relevant. Okay, if you have to issue an audit report saying that the company's financial statements are true and fair, then these are the things which you need to check for. SARA accounting policy disclosed, consistent with AFRF, estimates are reasonable, information RRCU, material transaction event adequately disclosed, terminology appropriate, SPC, structure, presentation, content of the financial statements is such that it achieves a fair presentation. Does everybody understand that? So that is first part of the essay, forming an opinion. In order to form an opinion. Considerations while forming an opinion. So whenever a question comes on forming an opinion, you have to write down the 6 or 6 plus 1, depending upon whether it is a compliance framework or whether it is a fair presentation framework. Right? We take a break at report, which are again very important.